you got pretty famous from talking about this certain subject matter, which is fasting.
Yeah.
Now, I want to talk about fasting because I've heard about it, and I'm sure here I represent a lot of my audience right now. I've heard the term fasting. I've heard loads of people in recent times over the last, I'd say 2 years, get really excited about it and say that it's a good thing.
Yep.
But that's really the extent of my knowledge on the subject. So let's just start right there. I mean, you wrote a book called Fast Like a Girl. You've got so much content out on the internet about fasting for both men and women. This book was written in 2022. Why? Why are you so focused on fasting? Why do I need to care about it? What's it going to do for me?
It's the quickest antidote to what we just said. If we've got all this physical, emotional, chemical stress coming at us, we've got taste buds we've got to change, we've got behaviors we have to change, there's a lot there. But I can show you how to compress your eating window into a 10-hour eating window, leaving 14 hours for fasting, something as simple as 14 hours. And I can show you how you can start to heal yourself without money, without time. You are literally tapping into a healing state that you never knew was there. And I think part of why we've had so many people pour onto YouTube and so many women gravitate to the book is that it's so, once you learn how to fast, you start to see your body in this whole new way. It can absolutely heal itself. So for me, fasting became this incredible tool that everybody could do. And we just had to learn how to do it. The women that I'm watching that are just dropping, I mean, men and women, hundreds of pounds and medications they're getting off of and mental health that's coming back just because I taught them how to compress their eating window and leave a longer time for rest so their body can repair. That is all, each individual is doing that. I didn't do that.
I'm the type of person that very much needs like stats to believe things. I'm one of those people. And once I've got the stats or some kind of like scientific evidence, then I'm all in.
Beautiful.
What do I need to know from a scientific standpoint? What research has been done on fasting?
Okay, so let's go through the basic principle of fasting, and I think this will help everybody, is that you have two metabolisms. So you burn energy when you eat, and you burn energy when you don't eat. But they're two different mechanisms. So when you eat, like let's use myself as an example. I had eggs and some avocado for around 11 o'clock today. So that's going to bring my blood sugar up. Now, as my blood sugar starts to drop, what's going to happen is my body's going to switch over into this other energy system. And I call this the fat burning energy system. I call this one the sugar burner energy system. When it switches over into this fat burning energy system, it starts to make a byproduct called a ketone. And that ketone will go up into the brain and it starts to repair your brain. And what most people don't realize is your brain needs 50% ketones, 50% glucose. So you're giving a fuel source to your brain that it desperately needs, which is why people, when they fast, are like, their mental clarity goes up, their cognition improves, their brain fog goes away, because you're literally giving a fuel source to your brain that it may never have been given before. It takes about somewhere between 8 hours to metabolically switch over into this fat burning place.
Okay. So if I'm doing a podcast and I want to be sharp,
yes,
I shouldn't eat 8 hours before.
Yes.
Fuck. Could you come back in 7 hours?
7 hours? Yeah, sure. I should have given you the memo before we got here. Yeah, so I think of it like a hybrid car. You know, you switch over into this fat burning place. So at 8 hours, you start to make the switch. By about 12 hours, your body's now starting to make a good dose of ketones. The brain is excited, so you're getting that mental clarity. Ketones turn off the hunger hormone. Mm-hmm. So you also, when you switch over, there's going to be a point in which you're not hungry. And that all happens at about 12 hours. But you're also, if you stay there a little longer, if you stay there and you go 14 hours, 15 hours. So check this out. Research shows at 15 hours, we see growth hormone go up. Okay, growth hormone is the hormone that keeps you young and helps you burn fat. We also see in men 1,300% increase in testosterone just from somewhere between a 13 to 15 hour fast. 13% increase in natural testosterone stores. And we can explain why that happens in a moment. And then we start to see inflammation go down. So all of a sudden, if you have people who have like joints that are hurting, they start doing 15 hours of fasting every day and they're like, God, my joints just don't have that same stiffness in them anymore. But if you stay in that fasted window, you keep going 17 hours, your brilliant body turns within and it goes, wait a second, no food's coming in. We better get stronger. So it literally takes the bad cells, the cells that are slowing you down, the cells that are turning into cancer, and it gets rid of those. They're called senescent cells. And it literally recycles them out of your system, and it goes into the cells that are still usable, and it makes them stronger. It fixes the intercellular parts. We call that autophagy. And that actually was if you want stats, the Nobel Prize in 2015 by a Japanese scientist, Dr. Osumi. He won the Nobel Prize in medicine and physiology for this term called autophagy. And that's when you go without food, your cells will heal themselves. That was back in 2015.
So I want to go into all of that. I want to start with why. Why does fasting help so much? And really, like, what I'm getting at there is if the effects of this are so profound in so many ways, then where did we go wrong? Because from what I, have been told, breakfast, lunch, dinner.
Yeah.
Breakfast, lunch, dinner. And then maybe, dessert.
Yeah.
And then,
Yeah.
That's the narrative that I was brought up on.
Yeah. Well, breakfast is the most important meal a day. I've done a lot of research on that phrase. Do you know where it came from?
No.
It was actually, and I don't mean to diss any companies out there, but it was a tagline that they came up with for cornflakes, for Kellogg's cornflakes back in the 1970s. They needed a tagline that made people eat cornflakes in the morning. And so they came up with cornflakes. Breakfast is the most important meal of the day. And that has continued until this day. I can't find any research, and many other fasting experts, many other blood sugar experts will tell you the same thing. There's just no research showing that breakfast is the most important meal of the day. So that became a myth that we need to bust. Second myth we've been taught is you can speed your metabolism up the more you eat. 6 meals a day. Remember that one?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, also a myth. There is no evidence that the more you eat, the faster your metabolism will be. If you want a faster metabolism, you need to know how to metabolically switch. You need to know how to go from sugar burner to fat burner. And that's where you start to lose weight. So that's the other myth that I feel like we have to break apart. And then we have this, I can tell you as a mother, and this is, not for anybody to have mommy guilt, but what we do as parents is we have certain statements we make to our kids, like, dinner's being served, the kitchen's closing in an hour. You need to eat lunch, you need to eat breakfast. Like, we are programmed when to eat by a clock, not by our own internal sense. So kids are raised to eat according to a clock, not according to when they want to eat. We don't say, am I hungry right now?
Yeah, that's so true. We all wait until 1 p.m. to have lunch.
Right.
And the morning we wake up, we feel like we have to have breakfast or we're doing something wrong.
Yep. And
then dinner time, any time between, 6 and 8, we have to sit down and eat again or we're doing something wrong.
Yep. If you just unwind that.
Yeah, where did that come from?
Right? Usually from your parents, and it came from a schedule.
What did my ancestors do before my parents existed and the schedules existed?
I can tell you exactly what they did.
What did they do?
They came out of the cave. Okay. I'm going to go back to our primal friends. Go back to our cave friends. They came out of a cave. They didn't have a refrigerator. They didn't have a pantry. They didn't have DoorDash. They had to go find food.
Did they have Uber Eats?
They didn't have Uber Eats.
Delivery?
Yeah, I'm pretty sure they didn't have Uber Eats. But what they did is they came out of the cave and they went to go hunt food. Sometimes they could make a kill really easily and bring it home and they would feast. Sometimes the kill wasn't as easy and they had to go far to find an animal to kill.
Exercise.
But what did they do when they had to go super far and they couldn't get food? They switched over into this ketogenic energy system. And that ketogenic energy system supercharged them. because every cell in the human body is the number one priority of our cells is survival. So we were built to make sure we could stay alive in the absence of food. So their ketones kicked in. And when ketones kicked in, they became mentally very focused so they could go find food. They were able to stay calm. Ketones will affect a neurotransmitter called GABA and cause GABA to come on so you feel calm, you're focused. Ketones will power up your muscles so that all of a sudden you have this incredible muscular energy, all because they were meant to go find food so they can bring it home.
Okay, so the body, which is orientated towards survival, when you hadn't eaten, it invests a lot of its sort of resources in your brain to increase the chances that you'll catch something to eat. So that's why when I fast or when I haven't eaten, I'm very focused, I'm very articulate.
That's right.
It seems, and I perform at my best.
Bingo. That's it.
Makes sense.
And then what did they do when they got a kill? They came home and they feasted. They didn't necessarily ration it out. They ate, and then they divvied it up again amongst the tribe, and then they went out again until when the food was gone, maybe a couple days, maybe they'd feast for a couple days. When the food was gone, they go out again. It's called feast-famine cycling. It is how humans were meant to live. The challenge we have is we have access to food all the time. That we are, feasting has taken on a really negative connotation because we're feasting on the wrong foods. But if we could go back and just be like our primal friends, and we could learn how to go in and out of this feast-famine cycling, using fasting as a tool for performance, for healing, and using food in the proper way and eating the right food so that our brains will work well. And there's a whole hormonal pack or sense of food that can help support hormones. If we're really conscious about the quality of the food that we eat, we're now mimicking what our primal ancestors were doing.
Does that also imply that we should exercise fasted? Because I was thinking about my ancestors, they would have been doing the most physical activity when they hadn't eaten yet.
That's right. Yeah.
They would have been doing the most physical activity right before they ate.
Yeah. So really interesting point, and you and I were talking about this in the beginning, is that when you exercise in a fasted state, you're going to get rid of the glucose that's been stored in your muscles. So as that glucose comes out, because your body needs it to go, you don't work 100% off of ketones and 100% off of glucose. You're needing both of them at different moments of your day. So when you're exercising in a fasted state, you're getting ketones and your muscles are releasing stored sugar, which is great for anybody who wants to lose weight because now you can lean out those muscles. Now let's go back to what our primal ancestors did. When they came home, they ate meat, they ate protein. And they stimulated something called mTOR. mTOR is when you actually create muscle growth. And what we now know is it takes about 30 grams of protein to trigger these amino acid receptor sites in the muscles to cause them to grow stronger. So for you, if you work out in a fasted state, you're going to release all those stores. You're going to have those ketones for performance, but then you want to follow that up with protein so you can build your muscles strong. And that is a hack that has worked incredibly well for so many people.
Okay. Historically, people have thought that fasting is a one-size-kind-of-fits-all technique, and there's one kind of fasting, which is you might just not eat for a prolonged period of time. But in your book and throughout your work, you describe these 6 different types of fasting.
Yeah.
What are the 6 types of fasting? And tell me what the difference is in outcome and benefit.
Yeah. It's a great question. So again, fasting is when we switch over.
Yeah.
So now we're in the fat burning place. At about 13 to 15 hours, we start making ketones. This is intermittent fasting. That's pretty much what most people, when they say they're intermittent fasting, that's what they're doing.
Okay, they take 12 to 16 hours.
Yeah. They're making ketones, their testosterone's going up, inflammation's coming down, hunger might be going away. They're kind of having this, a lot of people lose weight with that. It's kind of the most common fast.
Does it matter from the window? Does it matter what time I start and what time I end?
Mm-mm. You get to choose. You choose what that window should be.
So I could eat at 3 a.m.?
You could. There's a whole nother level we can talk about
Okay.
why you don't want to eat in the dark.
What's an ideal window, do you think?
I really like, it depends on the time of the year, but in the summer, I really like somewhere, if you're going to do an 8-hour eating window, like 11 to 7 in the summer. And then in the winter, because it's darker earlier, you would do more like a like a 10 to 5 kind of eating window.
It's not so hard to do 11 to 7.
Right? Not hard at all.
Not hard at all. That's not fasting. That's just having a slightly later breakfast and a slightly earlier dinner.
Yeah. But it's like being intentional, right?
Yeah, exactly.
Because you don't want to, you gotta keep blood sugar low. Otherwise, the minute blood sugar goes up, you're gonna switch over.
Right.
So you can't put it, if you walk past the kitchen and put a grape in your mouth.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, which is
you've pulled yourself
I'm guilty
up.
of. Yeah.
Yes.
So that's the first type of the 6 fasting styles. The second is, I'm going to try and say this word, autophagy.
It's one way of saying it. People say either call it autophagy or autophagy. People say it different.
You can tell me I said it wrong.
I've kind of landed on autophagy. I feel like autophagy is the best way to say it.
Autophagy fasting, what's that?
So autophagy fasting is about 17 hours in without food. Your cells will turn within and they'll start to heal themselves. And that was what Dr. Osumi's big discovery is that the cells clean themselves up. So what's interesting on this one, and this is something I really want to get out to the world, is that when you stimulate autophagy, what you're doing is you're turning on the intelligence inside the cell, and that intelligence is looking around and it's going, hey, there's a virus, there's a bacteria, get them out. So let's push these infections out of the cell. That mitochondria, it's not working well. We need to repair it. That endoplasmic reticulum inside here, it's lagging. We need to fix it. So it literally goes in and fixes everything inside the cell just at 17 hours. But one of the greatest studies I've seen in fasting was done during COVID. And it showed that if a virus comes into a cell that's in a state of autophagy, it can't replicate. Viruses have to live off of your energy system. So when viruses go into a cell that's laden with glucose, they have a party in there. They love that. They munch on that and then they go out and they start replicating. If you were in a fasted state when a virus comes in, it can't replicate. There's nothing inside that cell for that virus to take over and it dies.
Why does that happen? What's the reason for that sort of the CEO within my cells looking around and saying, right, let's clean all this stuff up?
Well, because once you've stimulated autophagy, there is one goal for that cell, and that is survival. So everything in there is on high alert.
Okay.
Everything is going to be in your survival interest. So a virus is not in your survival interest. So it pushes it out.
So it's kind of like an emergency signal because there's not been food for a while. So it's kind of like the last attempt to do everything the body can to help you make it through this period of hunger.
That's right. Okay. You've put yourself in this state of extreme healing. And it's all based off of this idea that your body wants to stay alive.
Okay, so are you writing your book that's good for balancing sex hormones and preventing colds?
So yeah, with autophagy, it's great for preventing colds. Here's what's interesting about autophagy for sex hormones is that the major part of your brain for both men and women that control all hormonal control is your hypothalamus and pituitary. That part of the brain does not have a blood-brain barrier. So it's very vulnerable to toxins. So whenever we have massive toxic exposure, that part of the brain starts to malfunction. We see this with polycystic ovarian syndrome, most common hormonal imbalance for women. Well, a lot of that is this imbalance of testosterone and estrogen, and there's a huge toxic piece that has destroyed or interfered with the part of the brain that controls hormones. So when we look at autophagy, there are certain parts of our system that are more easily influenced by autophagy than others. Well, it turns out the hypothalamus and the pituitary are easily influenced by autophagy and can repair themselves when they're in the state of autophagy. The other interesting cellular makeup that is highly influenced by autophagy are the cells around the testes and the cells around the ovaries. Those are the cells that are putting out sex hormones. And if that whole system is malfunctioning, when you go into a state of autophagy, those cells will respond and become better cells and be better at producing these hormones because of you dipping in and out of this state of autophagy.
If you love the Diary of a CEO brand and you watch this channel, please do me a huge favor become part of the 15% of the viewers on this channel that have hit the subscribe button. It helps us tremendously, and the bigger the channel gets, the bigger the guests.